This is the last event for the semester. We have a lot of success. We have to thank Ibeliz, who I don't see around, and all the people in the center that spend a lot of time organizing these events. It is my great pleasure to introduce one of those folks that worked very hard at putting these events together. And she was the organizer, main programmer for tonight. Yasmin Ramírez is an upcoming scholar who also, you know, she's all over the place, literally. You know, she gets in touch with people, and she has brought together a wonderful panel to address perhaps one of the critical themes of the times, the question of Puerto Ricanness and identity, and how we wrestle with that concept. And no better panel than the one we have here tonight. So I'm going to leave you with Yasmin, but you, I would like you to stay until the end. We have some refreshments and what have you, and the conversation and the networking is going to be as good as the panel. So, gracias por estar aquí.
Okay. I'm really so happy to welcome you all. When Edwin first became director at the center, he didn't really know what he was getting into, and he said, "You could do whatever you want. You just curate a show." And the first person that came to mind, only because I had already curated a show with Nitza Tufino, and other people in the taller, like Marcos and Fernando, had already a show here, that I said, well, the person that's most important to bring is Adál Maldonado, in particular, Blueprints for a Nation. So we ran with it. We got a grant from NAMAC, which we're very grateful for, to really put this presentation together in a way that does justice to his work and his vision, like the repainting of walls and the assistance of which Libertad Guerrera was so important to this project, and I really thank her for all her help. So, one of the big reasons I wanted to invite Adál is A, his work has broken ground and set precedents for future generations of artists. Born in Utuado, Puerto Rico in 1898 or 48, depending on what you believe, Adál attended high school here in New York and then moved west to attend the San Francisco Art Institute, where he was one of the few Puerto Ricans to take part in the Chicano art movement. Receiving his BA in 1973, Adál moved back to New York and co-founded Photo Gallery with a woman named Alex Coleman in Soho. And in so doing, he became, that's true though, that's actually true, in 1975, and in so doing, he became the first Puerto Rican visual artist to run a gallery in the middle of Soho. As director of Photo, Adál exhibited works of important, then emerging photographers, including Robert Mapplethorpe, Peter Hujal, and Larry Clark. Photographers who stunned the art world with their exquisite portraits of subversive subjects, for example, of S&M, of the queer underworld, and of teenage prostitutes. But exhibitions were only one part of Photo Gallery's programming. Photo Gallery and later Cayman Gallery, which was another Puerto Rican space in Soho that opened around the same time, also sponsored salsa concerts, poetry readings, and performances that brought the interdisciplinary experimental artists from El Barrio and Loisaida into a largely Eurocentric art scene. That short-lived period where up and downtown crowds mixed in the 1970s and early 80s facilitated conversations and work about identity, art, and politics that are still salient today. This gets to my second reason for inviting Adál, which is that his critical examination of Puerto Rican identity and nationhood intersects with the most exciting work being done today in Puerto Rican, Latino, and museum studies, as our two panelists will attest. On my left is Miriam Basilio, who is assistant professor in art history and museum studies at NYU. She was the former assistant curator at MoMA and former curator at El Museo del Barrio. And she's currently working on a book entitled,
I don't know the title yet, maybe you all, after you hear what it's about, we can talk later over drinks about what you think.
Okay, well you can tell them what it's about.
Oh, okay. The book is about, actually, it has a lot of common themes with Adál's work, which is one of the reasons that it's so great that I'm happy, one of the many reasons I'm happy to be here today, which is the book has to do with the ways in which the historical memory of a nation is constructed visually and through exhibition practices. And in the case that I'm looking at, it's Spain during the Spanish Civil War.
Okay, and to my right is Professor Urayoán Noel from Albany State University. And yay! And he's professor at literature, also a poet and a performer. Dr. Noel has recently completed his dissertation entitled NYPR Blues, Experimentalism, Performance, and the Articulation of Diaspora in Nuyorican Poetry. His published works include From Spanglish to Glossolia, Edwin Torres's Nuyo Futurist Utopia, and his book of poetry called Cool Logic, La Lógica Cool. Okay, the format of this panel is that I'm going to ask what turned out to be a very long-winded question to Adál, and then turn the panel over to Dr. Noel and Dr. Basilio. Okay, so Adál, here's this question. Adál, your body of work in the 1970s took a deconstructionist approach to photography by foregrounding the limitations of the medium to capture reality, as in your book, The Evidence of Things Not Seen and Heard. I added the not heard.
Not seen, but heard.
He doesn't care. Okay, repeat it. Okay. Your body of work in the 1970s took a deconstructionist approach to photography by foregrounding the limitations of the medium to capture reality, as in your book, Evidence of Things Not Seen. But even though you uncovered what the deconstructionists call the aporia of photography, you also acknowledge that images have power, and that which is unseen is too often mistaken as not existing. Thus, many of your projects involving the representation of Puerto Rican and diasporican identity and nationhood take an interesting and contradictory turn visually and discursively. The images, products, maps, cards, documents play with notions of what is authentic and what is fake. Like the manufactured passports that assume authenticity as agents from other countries stamp El Spirit Republic of Puerto Rico into being as an actual nation-state. These aesthetic strategies that reorder the world as we know it, the remixing of films, appropriation of objects, redrawing of maps, blurring of images and boundaries, the concern with breaking up standard understandings of the passage of space and time, the interdisciplinary approach to art making that involves collaborating with poets and musicians. All of this dates back to the work of the Dadaists and Surrealists of the 1920s. One of my favorite artists, Mata, once said that Surrealism was not a negation of the real, but more realism. So how do you see your work fit within this genre of art history? And how have Surrealist strategies helped you convey perhaps a truer picture of Puerto Rican reality than, say, documentary film and photography?
Wow.
Any part is
Hola. Before I start talking about this, I just want to thank a few people. I would like to dedicate first this event to my kindred spirit, collaborator in the Puerto Rican Embassy Project, Reverendo Pedro Pietri, who's been canonized as San Pedro Poeta by the Church of Our Mother of Tomatoes, which he founded. And he also holds the post of Spanglish Metaphor Consultant in the hereafter for the embassy. I also would like to thank El Centro Estudio Puertorriqueños for this great opportunity, and to Yasmin Ramírez for making it possible, to Howard, who's not here with us this afternoon. Hopefully he'll come in a little later, but he was very instrumental in helping the coordinate and actually install a lot of the work that's here. Libertad Guerra. She did such great, she was awesome, also in the installation. Alberto Hernandez, Jose Matos, Jose Camacho for their help as well. I just want to make sure everyone understood that this has been a great opportunity, and I want to thank you all for the tremendous effort that you put into this. My second month into going to school at the Art Center College of Design, I'll start with that story that's applicable to what you asked me. And after several weeks of handing in assignments, the instructor says to me, Adál, do you realize that you're a surrealist? And I said, no, I'm not, I'm Puerto Rican. And, you know, at that time, I had just come from New York City. I was raised in Puerto Rico, so I had these identity issues that I was trying to work with, so me chocó un poco cuando dijo eso. But he said, you know, you just said something, everybody started laughing, of course, and he said, don't be upset that everybody's laughing, it's just that you said something very surreal. So what I would like you to do after the class is over is go to the library and look up the surrealist movement of the 20s and 30s and see what parallels you may have to that movement. So I said, okay. So I came back a week later and he asked me, what did you find out? You know, and I said, well, what I found out was that there are parallels, but that they came to it through their travels through the Caribbean, through Africa, through to the East, and they sort of appropriated and used all of that way of making art, brought it back to Europe, added ideas and concepts of repressed sexuality because Freud was very popular at that time, and they call it surrealism. And what I found was that in my own environment in Puerto Rico, that was something that came very natural and was part of my everyday life. And I didn't have to really go and study this because it was just part of my experience as a person, as a Puerto Rican. And to give you examples, you know, the Catholic Church with all its iconography of levitating St. Francis of Assisi, talking to animals, you know, the hearts with espinas going and bleeding, and los cuentos de los jíbaros, the tall tales that jíbaros tell each other about when they decided to eliminate all the ugly people in Puerto Rico and to bring nature back into balance, you know. An aguinaldo by Ramito about a woman that was seen flying around the plaza and they mistook her for a UFO. You know, these are all things that are very natural to us in Puerto Rico. So when it came time for me to make art, it was natural that I come from that place, you know, of absurdity. Then there's the spiritualism and the Santeria and everything, you know. So when I discovered this, of course, I said, I'm going to continue to research all of this movement and whatever they've accomplished, because I've suddenly found something that runs parallel and that can inform me in how the academic, so like, you know, terminology that's used, so I can articulate some of these things. But I also realized that it was something that came to me very naturally because it was part of my experience. And everybody else wants to pick this up a little bit.
Thanks, Al. That was really stimulating, especially the homegrown surrealism. I just wanted to follow up on that and ask you about conceptual art and politics, right? Typically, at least in the 70s, right? Yasmin mentioned your early affinity with the Chicano movement, and of course, there's the New Rican movement here. Typically, movement politics, Latino movement politics, were centered around realism, right? Documentary art, right? And direct political action, right? But it seems that as the 70s go on, there's this attempt to rethink, right, what political art can be, right? That incorporates a more conceptual kind of search, right? And then Pietri goes from the obituary, right, to the non-books and the blank pages, right, and the elaborate performances, right, of some of his later work, right? And you see it in some of the Chicano poets, like Alista, would have turned towards much more conceptual work later on. I was wondering how you reconcile those two. Typically, people think of conceptual work, right, as aimed for elite audiences, academic audiences, and very different from the kind of direct action that we expect from community-centered Latino art. But it seems that in your work, and especially your collaborations with Beatriz, there's kind of an attempt to reach multiple audiences in multiple terms, right? Some of the references can be very elite or esoteric, right? But there's also kind of the shared culture, right, of growing up Puerto Rican or growing up in New York City. So it seems it's operating at multiple levels beyond just, high art, low art, conceptual art, programmatic, political art. Could you talk about how you link those two things, which haven't necessarily been thought of as going together, right? Conceptual art, abstraction, right, and direct political action.
Right from the beginning, my work's always been very conceptual in approach, except that in the beginning I was dealing with they were personal politics, and how myself as an individual positioned myself before my circumstances in my world. So it was more of a inner search. It was an inner search, it was an inner journey for me. And when I came back from Puerto Rico, actually, when I came back from San Francisco and I introduced myself to the New Rican movement and to Pedro and all of the poets, and their approach to making art, and it awoke something in me that informed me and where I wanted to approach ideas that were further than just how I interacted with my circumstances. I found that with the Puerto Rican Embassy. In developing the Puerto Rican Embassy, it gave me an opportunity and the way to actually go to those places. And since my background is really from the conceptual art and more abstract avant-garde art, it was a matter, in my case at least, of applying that way of making art to the concerns that were concerning us all politically and socially. So all I ended up doing was really just, I had a lot of friends that were documentary photographers, and they were taking a more direct approach to their expression, but I found that to be sometimes predictable and sometimes too obvious. So I just had my own approach to art making, and I just found in Pedro Pietri a kindred spirit in that in his poetry his work was also informed by the Dadaists and the Surrealists, and except that in his case as well as in mine, even though it's informed by those ideas and those concepts, our own personal experiences are filtered through that, through that way of making art. So with Reverendo Pedro, I found someone that we were like-minded in our approach to making art and what our concerns were. And when we started the embassy, then we realized that we had a vehicle where we could criticize and comment on circumstances and those things that were of crucial importance to us as New Ricans and as Puerto Ricans.
I have to say, is this on? Yeah. Is it on now? Okay. I have to say that I think it's very fitting that the work should be here at the Centro, because what I find really powerful and intellectually stimulating about your work is that you're creating this kind of open archive that of a nation, but that is critiquing these kinds of ideas about taxonomies and about state control and more reactionary forms of nationalism, but at the same time knowing that that there is this need to construct a memory, and that there are these needs to perform rituals, commemorations, to create these kinds of historical parallels, and to think about constructing a citizen through spectatorship, through shared kind of experiences.
I'm really interested now in this idea of the pedagogy of spectatorship. And so one thing I wanted to ask you was that I thought was really interesting when we spoke recently was how you were talking about your interest in what the Reverend Pedro Pietri was doing, and that how you saw that there was a need for something visual specifically. And you've really, as you can see here, and with the rest of your work, I mean, what you've done is so powerful because it's visual as well as conceptual, as well as textual, and the way in which you play with language. But I wanted to ask you specifically about sort of how you first recognized the need for that visual component, and then kind of how you started to articulate that.
You know, when I came back from San Francisco and I started hanging out with the New Rican poets, and I saw that Eduardo Figueroa was another New Rican wonderful and incredibly important visionary who had started a space down the Lower East Side called New Rican Village. And that came parallel to the New Rican Poets Cafe. New Rican Village dealt more with a space for music, whereas the cafe dealt more with theater and poetry. He and Pedro had conceptualized this idea of an embassy based on the concept that the New Rican Village was like a small world and it should have some kind of political representation and association. So they created this idea, and I was always in the background watching and listening and keeping my distance. I didn't want to sort of like interrupt what was going on there, but when they used to have events where they would use the idea, the concept of the heading of the Puerto Rican Embassy as a Puerto Rican Embassy presents, and they would present Pedro's plays and poetry recitals and other types of events. Eventually, when Eddie Figueroa passed away, and after waiting a respectful amount of time, I walked up to Pedro and I said, Pedro, this is such a wonderful idea. Eddie has passed, but this should not be dropped. We should not drop this idea. I believe that I know what the next logical step in this project is. And the reason I said that to him, because my work always had to do with self-referential. It had to do with autoportraits, and I did, for instance, a whole book, The Evidence of Things Not Seen, that were out of focus. I mean, that were self-portraits. I did another book that was a fotonovela about a man, an artist who wakes up inside of one of his own photographs and then has to come to terms with how he projected himself into this imaginary world. And then a lot of other types of similar kind of projects. So I was already building worlds in my work. So I recognized that the next step for the embassy was to actually create it, that I could become sort of like the architect, you might say, and create the actual visual images that could correspond, that could define this world. So Pedro being Pedro, he said, great, let's do it, you know. So I said, chévere. What we need to do is we need documents, we need manifestos, we need a national anthem. While you work on some of these like manifestos, I will work on the actual objects. So he started writing the Spanglish national anthem. I started designing what became the passport. And then in some places we combined both to, you know, it created another space. That's how the whole idea of the space began. And then as we did and created more events, then I would always create objects to go along with those events. And eventually I realized that there was a world that was coming together in objects. So then it occurred to me that it would be a very easy and obvious thing to put all this into some sort of installation, you know. And then I started adding other things. You know, I added a space program, the coconuts. You know, I figured that the Americans have the astronauts, the Russians the cosmonauts. We need the coconuts. Now, the coconuts is an interesting project because when NASA went to the moon in 1969, they discovered that there was a picture of a jíbaro sitting on the surface of the moon. And when they walked further and saw that there was a capsule with the cascos and the dominoes that belonged to this group of people who had been there already, they radioed down to Houston and said, "We have a problem, Houston, we have a problem." And they brought the, of course, you know, they brought the evidence back down, and of course, they they hid it because they didn't want anybody to know, that was going on, So then, then Pedro had his Church of Our Mother of Tomatoes. That became another component, another element. So he was adding, and as he added, then I would create the objects, the visuals. And in some cases, I would create the visuals for my own concepts and ideas, and sometimes we just created things together, So it was one of those symbiotic type of relationships where we could relate in that way because, like I said before, we were like-minded from the source that we were creating from, Is that close to what I'm trying to say?
About the installation changes in each place that it's put, that it's up. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the special things that you created, the objects you created for the centro, and your reasoning behind what you...
Yeah, when Yasmin came to me and she invited me to show here at the centro, we said, well, it's great to have samples of everything that we've done and that's been shown, but something new should be added to it as well. And that's what I did with every other place that I've shown this. And being a library, two things occurred to me, several things occurred to me. First of all, that a lot of it had to do with documents and textual, because it's a library after all. So I created a piece which is, I took a book, we agreed on a book that it's about mythology of women in American history, and they're very stereotypical. So what I did was I did what's called an intervention. I unbound it and put in an invented reality, so that when people are flipping through it, suddenly they come across this image with a historical background of this woman who had been to the moon already, So now what left to be done is to catalog it in the library and put it back into the library as well as a textbook and for research. That was one piece. Another piece was we felt that it would be interesting to do another intervention and create a time zone for Spirit Republic of Puerto Rico. Now, what we ended up doing was setting a series of clocks, like time zone clocks normally do, and they're set to capitals of the world, Tokyo, Japón, Madrid, London, Berlin, and then right in the middle of that, then it's Spirit Republic of Puerto Rico with its own time zone, and so that's also an intervention. So the closer that we get and this evolves, it becomes more and more, this world becomes as an attempt to make this world more and more solid and bring it into the world of hard objects, and so that the line between illusion and reality begins to become blurred, And another idea then was a time capsule, and a time capsule that would contain artifacts by myself, by Pedro, by other members of the embassy from the past and from the present. And that happened as a consequence of thinking about that societies and governments tend to erase history and leave out those things that are not, that does not suit their agenda, So because of that, and because of the gentrification that's going on these days, that you can go into a neighborhood and not even realize what had happened there like 10 years ago. One day, all of these influences and all these people may disappear, and I thought that it would be a wonderful thing to have a time capsule so that when they open it 100 years from now, they can see that there were a group in this world called Ricans and all the wonderful things, creative things that they did here, you know.
I actually,
That's something that I think is also really great about your project, that it's this kind of imaginary national museum that you create, and that you keep just like a museum. You keep adding more objects to it as it goes on. But I actually had a question that had to do with something else we talked about that had to do with language, and you were talking about the difference between being bilingual and Spanglish. And I wondered if you could talk about the relationship between the kind of visual language that you've created and Spanglish as a strategy.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, Spanglish, as I understand it, I mean, you know, there's a lot of people who think that if they put a Spanish word and an English word together, that they're talking Spanglish. And Spanglish for me is really what I've just said is really more code switching. Whereas Spanglish, I would say, is when you take a Spanish word and you put in an English thing and you sort of like mix them together, like pariciar, you know, or parquear, or whatever, you know. It's like really a mix of the two words together, of the two languages together. And I suppose that since I'm working with so that's a hybrid thing that happens, and since my work is really interdisciplinary, where I sort of mix different processes and different mediums together, then that creates a visual hybrid as well, you know. So if there's any relationship, I think it probably would be that.
I'm wondering if you could talk about institutional space and the marketplace in the context of a project like this. I mean, it seems there are now a whole series of opportunities for Puerto Rican / Latino, New Rican / Latino, right? Artists and writers, right, who are willing to take on, you know, the burden, right, of representing, right, a kind of vision, right, of the Puerto Rican, New Rican, right? And just as a reference, you know, Martín Espada probably one of our main, you know, poets at the present moment, was a Pulitzer Prize finalist last year for a book called The Republic of Poetry, right? No spirit, just the Republic of Poetry, right? And I read that book thinking, wow, is this like a spirit republic, or is actually thinking Puerto Rican nationalism, right? And I couldn't resolve the question, right? But Martín Espada is a kind of poet who's very much taken that as his political project, right, to represent kind of a version of the Puerto Rican political action, right, and build his career around that, and he does a great job at it. But it seems there's a way in which, by calling this a spirit republic, you're kind of foreclosing the marketplace, right? It's always site-specific, right? It's about objects, but it's also online, right? So it's never quite readable. It's never quite able to be systematized, right, in the way that maybe a more commercial-friendly, more marketable art project might be. I think a lot of young poets and artists are worrying about their own work in the context of the marketplace and having a successful career. But it seems that your work offers kind of another trajectory, right, where you know, conceptualism is its own politics, its own you know, process. I wonder if you could talk about that, right? Maybe how you view your work in relationship to you know, the market, institutional space, choices you've made, right, its perception, and also maybe tying into that, you could talk about collaboration as either an aesthetics, a politics, an ethics, however you want to describe it, but it seems that that's also key. I mean, your work makes people like us have to think really hard to see how we connect what each of us do in our research, right? Because typically disciplines and academic work is instruction in such a way, right, where the visual arts and literary arts are thought of as together, right? Maybe collaboration would be something that your work posits, right, that makes us all have to be collaborators, right, in our own kind of endeavor, yeah. A couple of questions there.
It's getting pretty petty.
I'm gonna let you off easy.
You know, you actually answered a lot of your own questions as you were saying it, you know. Yeah. You actually answered many of your own questions, but I will say first, that before I lose this thought, is that this imaginary world that Pedro and I have developed, for me, is a space where we empower ourselves through our own creative intentions. That's primarily the purpose of it. Where everything else is closed to you, or where you don't have an opportunity, or whether you're not considered, or where you're considered invisible, or out of focus, then you create your own space and you empower yourself through the creation of that space, and everything that you do is for that purpose. And there, in terms of my collaborations, I love collaborations. I love collaborations because it introduces other elements and it stretches my imagination into areas where I never really, sometimes may not have considered. To give you an example, sometimes a collaboration can happen totally unconsciously and spontaneously without even having intended it. When I was hanging the show at the Taller Puertorriqueño in Philadelphia, I was given two assistants to work with. One fellow was on one end, I was on the other with another fellow. So I said, here are my diagrams, and this is how this goes over here while I work with this other fellow over here. At one point, I got up and I went to the other side to see how the other fellow was doing. And there was one piece that was half of a chair with half of a book sitting up on top of the chair. And he had not seen the half of the chair. All he saw was the half of the book, And what he did is he created a little shelf, and he had it protruding out of the wall, and then he had set the book on top of that shelf, and it just looked like there was half of a book that was appearing out from inside of the wall. Now, it was never intended to be that, but when I saw it and I recognized that he had made my piece even better than what I had intended it to be, I said, of course. So those things happen in collaborations all the time, and those are sort of wonderful things that, if you allow them to happen, that you can grow from, and that enriches what you do quite a bit. And what was that other one that you mentioned? Was the third thing? Oh, the art market, yeah. And the art market, I think that the reason that Pedro and I were willing to do what we did without any consideration for whether it was going to be accepted or not is that we didn't really care so much about the art markets. Pedro used to pass the hat, and and I would go and sell some passports or whatever. We made do, and that freed us to be able to be as creative as possible because we didn't have to create what people expected from us. So in that case, I know that there's a lot of young professional people who are concerned about their work and how to make it in this world, but like, I'm an old hippie, I'm an old hippie, and I come from the hippie mentality that that you just make do with what you have, and you drop out of the society and create an alternative reality. So all of that comes into play into this world and into this work that I've created, and that I created on my own, and that I created in collaboration with Pedro as well. Yeah, do we have some questions from the audience? And Sheila has something to say.
I was wondering, how conscious were you in the early 80s or late 70s of the art collective movements that were, not only employing collaborative practices, but that later on it started as an alternative movement, and now they're considered part of the canon of art history. I'm talking about, the group materials with Félix González Torres, who was also like a conceptual artist, or even movement collab, which was also part of that, it's right in front of or near to the Rican Poets Cafe. How much overlap was there? How conscious were you guys of this whole movement taking place? And also to Miriam, in terms of, from the art history perspective, why is Adál, who's maybe like the person who synchronized this poetics with the performance, with the visual, how can it be viewed from the standpoint of the art canon,
A little bit.
Because why is it like on the fringes when it actually synthesizes, like, a lot of what was happening then?
I think that's an unanswerable question, but I think one of the reasons I do what I do is to put it on the record, to get people interested, to talk about it, because one of the ways to create the canon, of course, is through academia and through writing and through the kinds of things we're doing here, thanks to Yasmin. So hopefully, but I think the question that you made about the art market is, of course, another one, and it's very difficult to know. I think it'll take many years maybe to figure out. This is the kind of research I do all the time with Latin American art. Why was this show talked about by the critics, and there was something else happening at the same time, and for whatever reason it didn't get picked up and it didn't enter into the textbooks? I think that's a really difficult question to answer.
Just to pick up on that, in the book that I'm writing about the New Rican movement, one of the issues I had to struggle with as an art historian that it's very painful is that most of my colleagues, when they're writing about artists, like of the 70s, let's say people from DIA, they were receiving stipends of $2,000 and $3,000 a month. Wow. Because the DIA Foundation people believed that artists should be paid as well as a corporate executive. But we didn't get that. We maybe got an unemployment check, because we were working in not-for-profits, and I know that many of our not-for-profits existed with people voluntarily, like, giving up their position and working, but still collecting unemployment. So there's a great disparity in the economic situation, and the other thing I have to deal with is, for example, who collected this work? When you make it as an artist in the mainstream, it means that you have a body of collectors and museums. And it's very hard sometimes to justify, well, who is this person, what collection is this person in? Why? How can you assert that this person is an important artist like Jorge Soto when he has very few collectors and no major institutional appearances? So, I had to think about that so much in terms of my own practice and in trying to rethink what is a successful artist. And that's what we have to do as art historians, is completely challenge this notion that the market determines value.
Oh, and I wanted to add just one quick thing to that, which has to do with the courses I teach. One of the things I do also is to have an archival strategy where I get the students to question the canon by going back to the time, looking at institutional records, news articles, interviews with people, to find out that, hey, there was a lot more going on than just like the 3 white guys that are now in the museum. And so I teach a lot of classes that have to do with the history of the reception of Latin American art in the US specifically, to see not just what was there, but what wasn't there allegedly, to reconstruct these erasures that we live with now, but when you go back to the time, you realize. I just finished teaching a seminar with Edward Sullivan about this topic, and you would be surprised at the things that have yet to be documented that have happened, in this country with relation to exhibitions of artists who unfortunately are not given their due to this day. But they were there, and that's what we have to do, is to reconstruct that history.
I just wanted to make 2 quick comments. Regarding the collectives, back in the 1970s, really, to be perfectly honest with you, the only real collective that I was aware of, and that was because I was constantly interacting with them, was El Taller Boricua, that was up on 104th Street, 4th floor of Museo del Barrio. I knew that there were other, but I really them well enough to have an opinion about them. And if Pedro had any sort of like interaction, other than with the New Rican poets, which in itself I guess you could call it a lab. You know, you could say that that was a lab and a collective in the same way, and I suppose you could say that the New Rican village itself was also a lab. So, if anything, I guess those were the three labs that we were aware of, you know, that we interacted with, and that eventually, I suppose, influences, you know, what we end up creating here. Eddie's New Rican village, the New Rican Post Cafe, as well as the Urayoán. Insofar as that, someone mentioned text and stuff, and poetics and stuff. I just want to say that that wasn't difficult for me, because even though I come from a visual arts background, there's a very distinct history in Puerto Rican art of text along with visual imagery. And I guess it's because we just like to make up stories or whatever. Pero that was something that came to me easily, because it's just part of my experience as Puerto Rican.
Any other questions? Yes.
No. I want to. Can I speak louder? I want to ask Adál about what he thinks the role of academics is, and specifically not so much on the analysis or course teaching, but more on the legitimacy side on the one hand, and the marketization of your art, you know, how artists make a living on the one hand, and also how is that answer related to the new media, and you know, I know you have experimented with that, but the translation of artists' work to this new phenomena that we all face.
I'm not sure I understand the question very well.
I'm not sure I asked it.
No, sure it's a good question, but I'm not sure I understand it all that well. But insofar, and if I'm not going there, just redirect me. Insofar as the new technology, I've always been an adventurous spirit. You know, I don't fear trying new things, and I suppose that the reason I don't fear that is because I'm always looking for another way, and each media has its own inherent qualities that you can explore, you know, as opposed to trying to create a painting using a computer and try to use it to create multi images spliced together. I think that the computer itself has certain qualities that one should be experimenting and researching. To give you an example, when photography first came on the scene, it was a wonderful thing for painters, because before that, painters were sort of like supposed to represent reality truthfully, but now that this machine came out that could do that, painters can now go and experiment with abstract realities, you know? And if a photographer wanted to reproduce a painting, that was okay, but they were expected to work with the technology of the camera, which was that you could make multiple hundreds and thousands of images, so it was a reproduction process. It has lenses so that it allows you to come in on objects in a very minimal way, so it's a different way of seeing. It's about time, so that you capture time in space and things that really painters were not aware of before. So these were the qualities that really made an art photograph important as a work of photographic art, because it had its own qualities that you could research, you know. So that's what I feel about the new technology. You can explore that, and it's a wonderful thing if you explore it for its own sake, and what it can show, work and point us in the direction it can point us. I'm not sure too much about what I think about academics in the classroom, you know. I don't know, you know, whenever I go into a classroom and wherever I'm invited to talk, I just assume that the students have had plenty of assignments and have read every history book available in terms of what came before in the world of art. So what I try to do is engage students in their own personal lives, you know, and say, talk to me about yourself and talk to me about your life and how you project yourself inside of this circumstance and in your world, you know. And I don't know how much of that happens in the world of academics, you know. But, you know, that's where I come from, and that's what makes it important to me, you know. Shayla wants to say something.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yes, you do.
Adál's work is very important.
Oh, not about that.
Not
about me, not about me.
What do you want me to talk about?
Okay. I thought you had a question.
Oh, you, oh.
No, come. Somebody behind her does.
No, it just looked like you were going to ask something.
You're up to up next.
Hi, I have a question. It's about reception. When I first saw your work, the truth is it made me really upset and really angry. And it was, at the beginning, very difficult to me to deal with it. And I realized that it was because, to me, it was about memory. And it was about creating memory and Puerto Rican memory and traumatic memory and creating it to you in such a way that you see this work and now you have these new memories of what is being Puerto Rican. And to me, that was really intrusive and just making you have to deal with that, and it was like a wall. So that was really hard for me at the beginning, and it made me, in a way, want to not have to deal with the work and angry at the work. So I really wanted to know how different people have dealt. I think that had to do with having to lose control of your own memories and your own deal with yourself as Puerto Rican. To me, that had to do with that. And me being a control freak, I couldn't deal with it. But different people are different ways, so I really want to know how different people take your work. So.
You know, mostly the kind of reception that I receive from people is that that it's interesting. They feel it's interesting that somebody is articulating these thoughts in a different way. You know, that's normally and I think that's where a lot of people get caught up in my work. You know, they just sort of like appreciate another approach to articulating, you know, what they've probably heard so many times already, you know. And sometimes the work can touch some fragile places in a person's psyche, perhaps, you know. And I have a feeling that that's may be what happened in your case, and that may have to do with the open-ended, almost surrealist like approach to making art. I'm not interested in giving answers. I'm interested in creating a situation that requires for you to ask a question, and then if the work provokes a question in you, that may be difficult for you to have to confront and deal with that question that you're asking yourself. You know, am I making sense to you? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say something a little bit off this topic, but relating to, you know, Puerto Rican reality today in Puerto Rico, and that is that right now we're faced in the arts community not only here, but especially in Puerto Rico, with a terrible crisis, and that is the closure of La Escuela de Artes Plásticas. Right now, the government is going to make a 71% cut to La Escuela, which effectively will close the school, which has been such an important part of the development of internationally recognized Puerto Rican artists. So we're all dressed in black. We dress in black a lot anyway, but tonight it is a sort of a statement in solidarity with el pueblo artístico puertorriqueño, because yesterday they had a Día de Luto para la cultura puertorriqueña. A lot of artists wore black on that day and went in front of the Capitolio to demonstrate. And so we want to show our support and solidarity with Puerto Rican artists and the kind of suffering that's going on there.
Yeah, I want to say something to that. Yeah, a short while later, after we're going to wrap it up soon, and then we're going to go and to the launching of the Rican La Cápsula del Time, and then right after that, we're going to take a minute of solidarity, of silence with our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico, and hopefully maybe we can make a small short film and send it to them in Puerto Rico so that they can post it. I think that it's such an important thing to make sure that we have our voices heard, because culture equals identity, and we cannot allow it under any circumstance to have the culture erased. I've always said that politicians, that you cannot count on politicians for the truth, because they always have to amend their statements to fit, like their constituency, whatever they're running for, whatever. But if you want to really see what's happening in a society, you go and you look at the art, and in the art that's created by every society, it defines it, and it tells you exactly what was going on and where that particular group was in world history and the human condition. So I think it's really important that we make our voices heard and try to do whatever we can to support what's going on in Puerto Rico in terms of that.
Well, thank you very much for joining us in this discussion, and we're going to do the time capsule in about 10 minutes or so? 5-10 minutes break?
I'm going to say las 7. Let's say 15, so people who arrived late can have a chance to go around and see some of the art.
Okay.
¿Vale?
Buenas noches, gracias.
The capsule is eventually going to be sealed, and it will not be open for 100 years. So 100 years from now, when many generations down the road of other Neo-Ricans open this capsule, they're going to find the evidence of all the great things all the wonderful stuff that was created. I'm going to invite Sheila Candelario, Embajadora, to step forward. She wrote this amazing document that is going to speak to this a lot more, it's going to articulate the idea a lot better than I can possibly do. So please, Sheila.
Adál asked me to write something for this event. Adál and I have been working together since 2001, 2000, and it's been a wonderful friendship and amazing growth experience for me. And I usually write in Spanish. I venture very little in English, and this is one of the few things I have written in English. And it's called La Cápsula del Time. Time capsules are in essence vessels of time travel. The time capsules we have come to know throughout history have deconstructed nostalgia as they've secured a present vision of self into the future eyes of humanity. El Spirit Republic de Puerto Rico Cápsula del Time is truly, not metaphorically, a time machine a prueba de balas, and contrary to conventional wisdom, is the first capsule to preserve that which is only constructed in our imaginations, in our diasporican minds, securely preserved in the nitrogen of our jíbaro souls. La cápsula preserves the past as it dissolves time and contains the story of our nation as it is being written by future generations of ourselves. Following its launching on Mayo 14, 2009, at el Centro de Estudios Puertorriqueños at Hunter College in New York City, La Cápsula will be buried in El Centro's Iron Mountain, concealing that which exists in the parallel universe of our hybrid identity, a dimension that breathes victory beyond the realm of U.S. history. El Spirit Republic de Puerto Rico is an ever-evolving nation kept alive in the vaults of each citizen's imagination, a sovereign land where we gather after our travels from Guinea and Congo, from the Bering Strait, from the ports of Sevilla, from the sugar cane fields of Canarias. It is a land where our tongues are fused into the sounds and rhythm of the drum, into the Spanglish language sandwich, and into salsa. La Cápsula contains the blueprints of a sovereign nation where our identity travels as it evolves. This is the capsule concealing that which has arrived and is still to come, as it is conjured by our voices, by the images of our syncretic lineage of gods, goddesses, and our multichromatic skin. La Cápsula del Time is registered in the International Time Capsule Society, an organization created to maintain a global database of the location and contents of all existing time capsules.
So it is herein instructed as follows, that these items be kept sealed inside La Cápsula del Time and not be opened any earlier than the 14th de Mayo, 2109. The following is the content inventory of La Cápsula del Time. A Puerto Rican passport issued to a Hawaiian coquí on the request of M. De Peliz, professor of political science, and the Hawaiian Save the Coquí Committee that immigrated there from Puerto Rico and that was on the list of endangered species placed there for extermination by Hawaiian authorities. The Puerto Rican embassy was partly instrumental, this is true by the way, in stopping the extermination of the coquí in Hawaii through the action of naming the coquí the official mascot of El Spirit Republic de Puerto Rico and issuing it a Puerto Rican passport. An award-winning documentary, Bad Vacation, The Coquí Story, produced by Professor M. De Peliz and coquí activists in Hawaii, of the plight of the coquí in Hawaii, with a mention and image of a Puerto Rican passport, is also included. I will now place these objects in the Cápsula del Time. Of Ambassador Eduardo Figueroa's eyeglasses donated by Carmen Pietri Diaz. Joe Pietri.
I'm not Carmen.
Joe Pietri will say a couple of words in Carmen's place.
Good evening. Carmen couldn't be here because she didn't want to. No, not really. She's not feeling too well and she's a little bit bedridden. So in her place, I'm gonna put this pair of glasses that Eddie Figueroa used to wear when he didn't want to see anything. And he always wore them in really opportune times when But what he didn't like to see, he would wear his glasses and he didn't see it. And there was quite a few times it wore, right?
Yeah, I remember.
All right. Okay, so we're going to put this in now. Okay, thank you.
A proclamation issued to Ambassador Eduardo Figueroa in acknowledgement of his conceptualization of our Puerto Rican embassy. Puerto Rico is a spirit republic. Puerto Ricans are a rainbow people. We are made of all the races in the world. Wherever you go, there you will meet yourself. Ambassador Eduardo Figueroa, 1976. One copy of Reverendo Pedro Pietri's Book of Nothing, translated into multiple languages, donated by Embassy founder member Carmen Diaz Pietri. Did that come with you?
No,
Okay.
I think that'll come later.
Okay, that's coming a little later. You know what? I mean, we were going to seal La Cápsula del Time this evening, but I thought, we all thought that it would be interesting to keep it unsealed and open during the time that the show is going to be on, so that people can come and see. You know, and then at the end we will seal it. So there'll be some time for whatever was left out today to be able to be included.
Are we sure no one's going to include something that it wasn't named today? In that time
We
period?
we will look into that and analyze it very, very carefully. One original handwritten document written by Maria Teresa Mariposa Fernandez Rosario, accepting the position of head of state of a hybrid state de New York in her appointment of an all-female cabinet. Mariposa.
Okay. In the year
1994.
1994? That's when I was named?
1868? Oh, 1994.
2000, I was nominated by Reverendo Pedro Pietri and Adál to be the head of state of the new hybrid state de New York, the first and only woman to hold such a high title, y la única poeta tremenda. And this is actually, as I search my own personal archives for the speech, this is my recollection of the speech. I hereby accept in total focus my out of focus nomination by Reverendo Pedro Pietri y Adál and all ambassadors of El Puerto Rican Embassy, past, present, and future, to be the first mujer y la única poeta tremenda to bear the title of head of state of the new hybrid state de New York, a state of mind, a free, unassociated state of free minds and free people. I name my cabinet of powerful mujeres as follows. Sandra Maria Esteves, la madrina of the New Yorican poetry movement, teacher, artist, writer, poeta. Esperanza Martel, advocate, healer, artesana, teacher. Melisol, my right hand, eyes and ears, poeta, twin sister, soulmate. Susana Cabañas, la poeta, historian, archivist, mentor, friend, sister, poet, teacher. Sonia Gonzalez, documentary filmmaker, sister, friend. Caridad de la Luz, la bruja of the boogie, and so many women to be added to this list who have come into my life since. So. Thank you. This paper is a recollection, Margarita, okay? As I search my archives, meaning all of the boxes in my house were all my writings for that original list, but Margarita, who is with us, was named in my cabinet as La Gitana and card reader of El Embassy. So I want to acknowledge my sister fortune teller extraordinaire. Okay, and I will never, I don't, okay? All right.
Vaya Margarita. While Papeloto makes his way up here, I just wanted to mention real quick, I forgot to say this. The reason that Mariposa was named as head of state of the hybrid state de New York was because Pedro and I decided that we wanted to annex New York City to the Spirit Republic of Puerto Rico in the same way that the United States had annexed Puerto Rico to the United States, so we thought it would be fun to turn it around. And so therefore, we had an event, and Mariposa was named as the head of state.
And Hillary ran that year for Senate.
And Hillary ran for the Senate that day. Papo?
Anyway, good evening, everybody. Good to see you guys. Okay. Tato, ho. So I'll do my whole presentation. We need to open this and that's okay. I'll tell you what I'm putting in the capsule. Look at that noise. Pedro loved it. What are you talking about? Pedro's making that noise. Okay. So, in here, if you don't mind, are some of the original artwork for the Poets Opposing War that we did. Huh? Okay. So that's that. And Pedro's poem on opposing war when we did our presentation at the first Spanish Methodist Church, the Poets Opposing War, right after the war started. You know, the current war is still going on, that one, you know. So this is our posters. That was like one of our samples. It didn't turn out. We were going for black and white. You know, the person's Xerox machine that we borrowed and tried to use up their whole inkjet, you know, didn't work too well. We complained. Okay. And then this is this is the poster in miniature. So, you know, so behind that. Okay. Now also we're going to include in here today. Okay, here. In this envelope here, first, some more materials from that event. Also, there's the last remaining Poets Opposing War button. And I want to take time to tell you that everybody should make their own button. Okay? And the P can stand for whatever you want. Like people opposing war, principals opposing war, parents opposing war, you know, you can do your thing. You know?
Professors.
Right? And this little button here of the what do you call this, the Mexican art? This is the button for Calaca Press that came to our aid when Joe and Pedro and I were in Tijuana, and they you know, Brent and Chelo took care of all three of us and gave us R&R and everything, so we're including their button in here too. Oh, and also behind here, I'm sorry. And behind here, these are two attempts of making my DVD on Pedro. What it is it's a snippet of Spiro Juan reading at Modesto Flores garden when they named it for the Pedro Pietrialda. And so he's reading Tata and Dear Friend, and then Pedro's last poetry reading in Tijuana, in Playas de Tijuana, in a cafe called, what's it called? Techno Cafe. Really cool place, and in Tijuana, and Pedro is there with his oxygen and his wheelchair, and it's a really cool reading. You get to see it. Anyway, we'll make more of these, but this one's going here, okay? And okay, and two last things. Okay, here's the envelope. Oh yeah, and one of our business cards, Boricua Blues Brothers at hotmail.com. and then okay, so. And there's a copy of To Get Drunk, You Have to Drink. I'll show it to you there. It looks like this, which is printed on high gloss photographic paper to last 100 years. Okay. And it looks good. And Speed, I have a copy for you. And I'm going to read to you now the poem that I wrote. And it's going in there. It's already in there because it's in the black. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. These are just extras. Okay, one of Pedro and my code words was mission control. I'm not going to tell you what it stands for because, you know, a breach of contract. But it was our thing. And so I titled this poem called Cosmic Mission Cosmonauts. For Pedro. When the bottom of my life had fallen out, and I was down and out, fending for myself in an anti-poetic world, my shadow having left its shadow sitting on the stoop of my youth to contemplate the meaning of this life for itself, to get back to me when he discovered the answer and its meaning. You and I began our meeting that became our lifelong cosmic mission of chaos to control, walking the naked streets of free verse rhythm and its rhyme, pounding concrete streets till dawn, covering each other's back, lulled into a drunkard sleep until the world began its mundane day anew. We were drunk and mad. We were mad and drunk with love and drunk with poetry and the rums of Puerto Rico, because the two go so well together. And you and me, like you and me, were the very best of friends. To personify the sacred rhyme, indeed, until the very end.
And I would like to place a copy of this in this vault because Tato is really one of the originators of the movement, along with Piñero and with Pedro and Algarín and the rest of the crew. And he's here with us this evening, and maybe he'll say a couple of words. But first I'm going to read what the, Tato's also going to receive a Pedro Pietri Hand Award on June the 12th, and we hope that a lot of folks here will be able to make that. It will be here in the same building on the 12th floor. Tato La Viera, blessed are you by innate, quasi supernatural imaginative powers and soulfully human insight, hindsight, and foresight. And Puerto Rican Embassy hereby recognizes your lifelong contributions to the one and only Boricua community within and without the out-of-focus parameters of El Spirit Republic of Puerto Rico and in El Mundo Entero y la Luna, transcending the outer stratosphere of the mambo dance floor of our collective imagination. On this day, Sábado 29 of April of the year 2006, a Puerto Rican Embassy therefore declares Tato La Viera Ambassador at Large of the most visionary of visionary Boricua poets. This was presented by Mariposa, head of state of El Hybrid State de New York in the year 2006. Un aplauso, por favor. Tato, would you like to say a couple of words?
Gracias.
Gracias a ti.
Amado.
Sí. Dios te bendiga.
Usted también, joven.
Now, one original handwritten poem by Ambassador of the Female Republic of Thought, Sheila Candelario, created for the Puerto Rican Embassy's Get a Clue, First It's Me, Then It's You, performed at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. This event protested the issuance of subpoenas to members of the Nuyorican artists activist community, among them Hector Rivera, the Welfare Poets, and Tania Frontera, an independent filmmaker. The Puerto Rican Embassy called for artists to rise up against Big Brother tactics of the Bush administration and stand up for your guaranteed rights of self-expression. Sheila, por favor.
It was very important for me to put this poem into the capsule because it documents the history of a struggle and resistance of the Puerto Ricans here in the island. I am not going to read the poem, but I would like to acknowledge Adál's vision in including all migrations of Puerto Ricans into the Nuyorican and to El Espíritu Republic de Puerto Rico. It is a constant migration. It is a revolving migration. It is a continuous migration. And Adál has acknowledged this by including new members into the embassy, members who not necessarily have had the full Nuyorican experience, but are absolutely very identified with the diaspora that we're in. So this is my poem, and thank you, Adál.
Aplauso. Written for Puerto Rican Embassy's Viequeton, which happened in 2001. It was a 3-day poetry and music marathon in the municipal island of Vieques, Puerto Rico, in protest of the U.S. military war practices on the island. We designed this t-shirt, and his poem was written directly onto the t-shirt, and it says, hay que ir a Vieques, armado de poemas en verdad, en prosa, en rabia, pero sutiles y sin miedo, ejerciendo la palabra que incita a otros y que significa pueblo, cambiarles cada tiro por un verso y entre los poetas quedarnos con su armamento en el canje y darle esos hierros a los escultores para que hagan su obra. Manifesto incitante por Ricardo León Peñavilla. So this will go also into the... I'll unfold that, in a very nice way.
So they don't say we're untidy 100 years from now.
Then we have several exhibition catalogs of Blueprints for a Nation, this traveling exhibition that's been going around to different universities and museums, and those I will put into the capsule after, towards the end. We have one toy painted black. I purposely left this for the end because what's so significant about Spiro Jr., that's Pedro Pietri's son, is that if anything is a capsule of time, is your children, you know, and who is going to carry us into the future, you know, as our children. So Spiro Jr., Reverendo Pedro Pietri's son, will place one toy painted black. Reverendo Pedro's Spiro and Reverendo Pedro would often go crazy painting black sprees and start painting Spiro's toys black. Spiro will place one of the painted toys in the capsule with a message to his father, and Spiro will actually give that message. And Spiro, maybe you can read something for us. Do you have something you can read for us? Mm-hmm.
This is a message.
Something special will happen soon. Don't remember. Return to sender. Tuesday in the afternoon. And that's from the Spirit. So where is your mother today? Speak now. Okay. No, we don't need a machine. Okay, what are you going to talk about now? We got to now talk loud, you know. What are you going to talk about?
Talk about grass.
Grass?
Yeah.
What about grass?
Say, what do you like to eat?
What do you like to eat?
Grass?
Why do you like to eat grass?
Because I'm a grass.
How
Say,
come?
what
You ever tried smoking grass? You ever tried smoking grass?
I want to eat. Say, what's your name?
What's your name? so you like to eat grass? Yeah. I'm a grasshopper. I like to smoke grass.
There we go. Okay, Spiro, you be.
Alright. Good? Alright. Alright, I'll just go for that anyway. Pedro Pietri. My father was a poet. He wrote about love and nature, family and his people, injustice and revolution. Now I find myself here alone, but my father is pretty much alive in his poetry and in me. This is a love poem he wrote to my mother. Her simplicity is her mystery. There is no danger of her living forever. She will die of natural causes on one night and be reborn the next morning. She wasn't created in one day. It took forever to meet her. Many wars had to be stared at, waiting for a poem to occur, until the unexpected moment of an unforgettable feeling in the journey of searching for someone to love arrived, and I survived to document the experience late at night with the beginning and no ending, memorizing a silent sunflower. Now, this poem is about the artist in nature. Telephone booth number 54301. Minority poets who write about minority issues, such as the sea, the wind, the ocean, and the hidden valleys, leading to shadows of liberated verses, cannot be referred to as mental midgets, bitter and very hurt, but as pioneers of independence. Alright, this is just the last poem, so... This next poem is a document for the ages. Free grass for the working class. Free grass for the working class. Don't let the system kick your ass. Free grass for the working class. Don't let the system kick your ass. Defend your imagination at home. Let no politicians hear your poem. Tell your employer to go and screw. There's nothing wrong with you. The head you save will be your own. Convince the grass is green. Convince the grass is good. Convince the grass is great. Convince the grass is legal. Convince the grass is free. Convince the grass is magic. Convince the grass is more powerful than pen and sword. Never ask the Greek Rican, how does he make ends meet? Be content by just knowing he is one of us who supports and will never stop supporting. Free grass for the working class. Writing a poem is also work. Singing a song is also work. Painting is very hard work. Later for laws that are passed to keep the working class off the grass and all that jazz. Listen up and listen good, bro. It's cool to make ends meet without selling your soul to the Virgin Surgeon General. And that is all you have to know. The street poet told you so. Free grass for the working class. Don't let the system kick your ass. Free grass for the working class. Don't let the system kick your ass. Your problems all came to pass, celebrating your high mass. Free grass for the working class.
Yes, Spiro. Another big round of applause for Spiro.
I'm Joe Pilcher again. Barrio told me, Joe, since you're the only one that knew me all my life, I'm commissioning you to write your memoirs of me. So here I am, writing. I have two chapters here. One, the beginning in Puerto Rico, and then the second one when we came to the New York City, and it's a 5-building walk-up in West Harlem, Amsterdam Avenue, up to the time that we moved to the projects. So this here is my memoirs, along with my sister, of our brother Pedro. And this will be in a time capsule, but Adál, I want that sealed because Pedro said to seal it until it's made public. Okay? All right. You know how Pedro is, and we don't do it the right way, and we're both in trouble, right? Okay. All right, thank you.
I'd like to ask Max Resto to say a few words. We're going to also include the Blueprints for a Nation catalog brochure that was produced for this exhibition, and Max has created a wonderful, he's written a really insightful and wonderful piece for it. Max, puedes.
Thank you, Adál. Gracias. As a matter of fact, the text that appears here is a text that I was commissioned by Adál to write for the exhibit when it opened out in Puerto Rico about a year ago. And I was surprised that you came back and asked me to translate it. I did a great job. Well, I'm still looking at it and I go, it sounds a lot better in Spanish. I hope you like it in Spanish and in English, and I hope the people in 100 years like it too. So thank you very much. Thank you all for coming, and hey, the spirit of Puerto Rico lives.
I'm going to invite Juan Valenzuela to come up. He's so important to this project because he was also very, very close with Pedro. He directed many of his plays, and they collaborate on so many different projects together. So Juan is going to probably read and as well as say a few things.
To hang out with in the 1970s, to hang out with Pedro Pietri meant to hang out with the Count Willie Pietri and with the poet Jesus Papoleto Melendez. So I did. I hung out with him. But Papoleto, in or about 1979, left New York for California, where he remained for the next 13 years. And the Count Willie tragically died in a car accident in the early 80s. It was during this decade, the 80s, that Pedro and I saw a lot of each other, almost daily. We broke bread together with our wives and sometimes with our lovers. We did some crazy things, but also good things. In those years, personal tragedy befell upon us. I was always there for him. He was always there for me. I count Pedro Pietri among one of my best friends. Cheers, bro. Era el año 1900. ¿Quieres un trago? Porque se va a ir para allá.
No público,
No hay público. Dale, porque se va a ir a la cápsula.
En honor a la patria. Yo sabía que era algo.
Bueno, era el año 1987 y Pedro vino de visita a mi apartamento en la calle 10, en Manhattan, con una joven y bella mujer de cabello negro, labios carnosos, ojos delineados por una línea fina de lápiz negro, tez de nácar muy tersa. Ella era una poeta mexicana de visita en Nueva York. Nos pasamos un rato muy ameno y con gran curiosidad. Jamás volví yo a verla, pero Pedro desarrolló con ella una relación a la vez espiritual y explosiva. Ese mismo año, más tarde, Pedro fue a visitarla a Saltillo, en el estado de Coahuila, en México. Y ahí, en el cementerio de San Juan Compostela, a la falda del cerro del pueblo, se unieron en matrimonio. Pero esta no fue una unión para este mundo, sino para el mundo de los muertos. El producto o el resultado de ese idilio es un poemario del cual unos cuantos poemas ahora leo. Amor de mi muerte, inventados por el reverendo Pedro J. Pietri, ciudad de Nueva York, 1987, editados por la poeta Marta Margarita Tamés, Saltillo, México, año 1987. Feliz cumpleaños. No es ningún secreto que la vida no hace daño y la muerte es bisexual y nos deja entender que todos somos normales. El único crimen conocido en la historia del mundo es vida eterna. Eso es imposible por ahora. Los poemas seguirán escribiendo tu nombre en páginas que caen del cielo al techo de tu casa en Saltillo. Fue y seguirá siendo un placer nuestra tragedia. No me despedí de ti por ahora con docena de rosas amarillas y ratón muerto en plato de oro para tu viaje de vuelo bajo tierra. Ni adiós o bienvenida se encuentra en nuestro diario vocabulario de barrio de dignatarios y disparateros, unidos en la lucha contra todo. Si no me dan de beber o fumar, no voy a recitar o contestar preguntas al fin de esta lectura. No me importa un carajo si se van o se quedan. Los que se van, que se vayan. Y los que se quedan, que también se vayan. Para yo terminar antes de empezar a hablar. La próxima vez que te acuerdes, la próxima vez que te acuestes con una mujer que ama solo la fama para alimentar un secreto espiritual, sueña con este poeta. Quiero también conocer ese placer con el título de supernatural. En ese sueño, amárrame con la soga del último amante tuyo que se ahorcó, para que yo no pueda interponer esa sagrada ceremonia de novia con novia. El novio prisionero en silla de ruedas de goma, vacía, al lado de la cama, donde ella ama a ella. Y él pierde la cabeza sudando, rezando, para que nunca termine el sueño. Tú me haces falta, porque sé que nunca en esta tierra prometida los insectos y difuntos tocarán la puerta para entrar. Eres libre y por eso te odio, con un amor misterioso y dulce. Si no me mortificas, si no me prometes odio, si no me traicionas otra vez, no me dejas otra alternativa. Quemaré tus poemas antes que se escapen de tus ojos para que puedas descansar en paz por ahora y nunca por siempre en este mundo. A las 4:30 de la mañana tocaste la puerta de casa, borracha, quejándote de todo y de nada, más de nada que de todo. Me criticaste por encontrarme dormido, cuando bien sé que los poetas no duermen. Yo estaba cansado. No tenía la energía para darte una gardenia por tratar de joder mi cabeza. La única noche del año que duermo. ¡Malditos sean los hombres que prohíben que mis labios besen los labios de otra y otra mujer! Gritaste con mucha pena en la voz. Yo inmediatamente me desperté para defender mi nivel de perversión. Tú, cuando me viste inocentemente caliente, con decadencia te dormiste. Se sentó una mariposa ladrona en la tumba del Espíritu Santo para buscar basura y botar poemas de una maleta llena de tierra azul, robada en un cementerio de aluminio. Lo que yo sé es que lo sé todo, dijo el filósofo mexicano don Juan Valenzuela, viudo de Santa Bárbara, de la 8ª Avenida en el distrito de Luz Roja. Santa Bárbara es secretaria de Estado del barrio transexual y jura por su difunta madre que ella y él son examantes del pintor Salvador Dalí, y le dio gonorrea a Sócrates bajo el puente de Brooklyn una noche de luna llena. Yo lo juro por tu madre, porque Dios no merece ese honor, que aunque no me ames para siempre, voy a llorar cuando te mueras, desnudarme en la funeraria, brincar dentro del ataúd, besarte la boca y chupar la nieve de tus senos con pasión sagrada y decadente. No me importa lo que digan las gentes cuando yo entre dentro de tu cuerpo de luz apagada, para que al fin de esta boda negra tú tengas juventud eterna, más allá en el olvido. Pido que no me perdones. En este y el otro y el próximo fascinante miedo a la luz del día, yo, reverendo, absurdo y orgulloso, sin pecado o crimen contra la rebeldía, yo, poeta somnoliento de versos antirreligiosos, solo me escondo detrás de mi sombra. Con malicia abro esa sombrilla nocturna y negativa que a una bruja virgen se le olvidó cerrar en ese antimanicomio dormitorio, a donde es imposible dormir de noche y de día se piensa la última vez que colectivamente desnudamos a la muerte, tomando y fumando y cantando, negando haber nacido para evitar reencarnación en otra nación de piel, de ojos, de ríos, de sangre. Así, no hay que escribir más para amanecer dueño de destino y desayuno, con hierba buena, con don roncu y coca pura. Y yo, enemigo número 1 de la formalidad, usé mis talentos literarios para en paz y en pánico de puto con luto académico, ceremonialmente masturbarme gritando: ¡Soy difunto! ¡Eres difunta! Felicidades.
In Vieques that the Puerto Rican Embassy coordinated, we were fortunate that we were able to get the then governor of Puerto Rico to give us a proclamation proclaiming Vieques, la isla de los poetas. And I'm just going to read this real quick. And this is a real proclamation from the governor of Puerto Rico. El gobierno del Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico manifiesta su adhesión a las iniciativas públicas y privadas que salvaguardan los derechos fundamentales y inherentes a la dignidad de todos sus seres humanos. La conmemoración del Viequezón 2002 poemario en concierto por la paz constituye el encuentro internacional de los poetas, músicos y artistas de las artes visuales, quienes a través de sus creaciones reclaman y construyen la paz y la esperanza para la isla municipio de Vieques. La actividad de referencia bajo el lema Plena sí, bombas no, genera la ocasión propicia para declarar la isla nena, isla de los poetas, y concienciar a nuestra sociedad acerca de la trascendencia del arte como expresión transformadora y hacedora de la paz. They should be reading this in Puerto Rico now. Yo, Sila María Calderón, gobernadora del Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico, en virtud de la autoridad que me confieren la Constitución y las leyes de Puerto Rico, proclamo el 3 al 5 de mayo del 2002, Viequezón 2002, poemario en concierto por la paz. And this will also go into la cápsula del time.
Vamos a cerrar el evento con un minuto de silencio en solidaridad a nuestros artistas puertorriqueños que están en estos momentos luchando por la preservación de todas las instituciones culturales y de arte en la isla. La Escuela de Artes Plásticas está por cerrar, los recortes presupuestarios todos son de más de 60%, la Escuela de Artes Plásticas hay una amenaza de un recorte de 71% de su presupuesto. La cultura es lo que nos ha mantenido a nosotros vivos, vibrantes luchadores. Así que si amenazan nuestra cultura, yo creo que todo el mundo va para los montes. Y esto es cierto. Así que un minuto de silencio en solidaridad a todos nuestros artistas puertorriqueños. Con el arte no se juega, la cultura se respeta. Buenas noches.
Amén.